Welcome, everybody, to Living the Next Chapter. I have a wonderful guest with me today. We met on Clubhouse. We are Clubhouse pals now, and I've been going through Justin's profile on Clubhouse, hearing him in rooms talking and sharing, and looking forward to talking to you today, Justin, about your book and getting to know you a little bit more past Clubhouse and now kind of sort of in person on Zoom. But good to see you today, Justin. I'm so happy to have you with me today. Justin Belt, and your book, Slaying the Lion, Hunt What Is Hunting You. Great title, Justin. I like this. So I'm ready. I'm here as a student. I'm coming to learn. I'm ready to learn. So let's first of all, where are you in the world? And give us a little bit about Justin to start.
I am, well, first off, it's nice to be here. Thank you. And it's been great getting to know you, David. I appreciate it. I am in DFW, so that's the Dallas-Fort Worth area of Texas. Not necessarily in the city, but kind of out in the suburbs, which here are really as big as cities. I am a teacher. I've been married for almost 19 years, and we have 5 kids and a golden doodle puppy that is about to drive me insane.
I love it. I hit all my dogs upstairs. So as long as they don't start howling, every time I do podcasting, these 2 dogs, for some reason, they've never howled ever in their life. But as soon as I hit record, they decide it's time to sing. I don't know what's going on. But anyways, so if you hear some howling, that's all that is.
Maybe they need their own podcast. I mean, there may be a market for singing dogs.
Maybe that might be a thing. I could maybe be rich from that. I'm not sure. I don't have a book yet, but you do. So tell me about the book. How did this all come to be?
So I'm originally from Jackson, Mississippi. We moved from there to Joplin, Missouri. More specifically, Webb City, but yeah, it's all the same, almost the same. And so I was a teaching pastor in our church there. And so I would preach maybe once a month, once every other month. And so about 5-ish years ago, I was reading this book called Chase the Lion by Mark Batterson from National Community Church in Washington, D.C. I loved it. Loved it. And as my turn to preach was coming up again, I was like, I want to use something from this book because I had marked it up with notes and everything. And then as I started thinking, because his slant in his book was about chasing the lion, and it's more of a not be afraid kind of message. But as I was reading the book, I really began to think about this whole thing of why stop at chasing it? Why not kill the sucker? And I really began to reflect on myself. Because throughout my life, I have this constant theme. I've had this constant theme of fear and a lack of confidence that have robbed me from so many things that I've wanted to do in my life. And, just when I think I've overcome it, something would happen and it would come right back around again. There was an endless cycle. I tell you, an endless cycle of fear and a lack of self-confidence. That would lead to areas of shame and guilt and everything else. And I'd reached the point where I was tired of it. And so the question that I had in my mind was, God, why would you tell us to chase the lion, to not be afraid of it, if you're also not telling us to confront it and to slay it, like just to get rid of that thing? And so I had this idea in my head of, what would you do if you came out of your home going to get your Starbucks or whatever your favorite coffee is, and there is a lion, like a 500-pound lion, fangs bared, growling at you at your door. What are you going to do at that point? Are you going to close your door and calm yourself and hope that it magically goes away? Or are you going to pick up the nearest weapon that's beside you and say, nope, I'm not dealing with this. You're not going to frighten me. I'm going to go right through you to get to my Starbucks because I really need my Starbucks.
Yeah.
So I preached this message in church, and I had a spear. A friend of mine made me a spear with a plastic tip, not a real tip, but I had a spear in my hand. And I was really I was just encouraging people, just, from my heart and what I believe is God's heart to theirs is that, you know, we take this verse from Peter that, you know, Satan is like a roaring lion. And we take the like out and we look at Satan as a roaring lion, and we let that frighten us. You know, we let obstacles frighten us. We let rejection frighten us. We let all of these things frighten us. But yet that's not the will of God for us. Satan's not a lion. He's like a lion, but that's just a comparison that's being made so that we are aware of how he acts. It's not a warning to be afraid that, ooh, Satan's coming for you, or ooh, life is coming for you, or ooh, obstacles are coming for you. And for so many of us, David, me included, we live in such a fear mindset that God is really trying to break us out of. Because there are people who will never experience a freedom from fear if they don't see us be free from it first. And I totally understand that now. So after I preached that message, people were coming up to me after the message, hey, that should be a series. I was like, well, it's just a one-off because I don't preach all that often, so it couldn't be a back-to-back series. And then somebody came to me and said, hey, that should be a book. And you know how you think people are just being nice and kind. And you know, I'd always wanted to write a book, but I never thought that I really had something that needed to be said. And so, you know, I kind of filed that idea away. And, you know, God brought it back to me maybe a year later when we were looking at moving from Joplin to Texas so that my wife could pursue a dream of becoming a doctor. And God brought it back to me and said, no, that wasn't just someone being nice. This is what I want you to do. I want you to write this book. And so I spent the next 2 years, and it probably only should have taken a year to write. But I got to a point in the book where God wanted me to talk about kind of my own struggles with an addiction to pornography that I didn't want to talk about it. I was afraid of what people would think about me. I was afraid of, you know, how that would reflect. And so I put the book down for a year. I refused to think about it. I refused to, because I didn't want to do it. And eventually, after a year had passed, my wife was like, why haven't you finished writing your book yet? And I didn't have a good reason. And so I went back and I said, okay, God, I'll do it. If you give me the words, I'll finish this. And honestly, from the point that I prayed that prayer to publishing time, probably a month passed. So God gave me everything that I needed to say, exactly how I needed to say it. And I think that the book is, I'm so proud of it. It published right as the pandemic was coming. And so I didn't market it because I knew that people had more important things to think about health-wise and everything. But it got into the hands of some people, I think, who needed it. And I've been really delighted to see that it's gotten some really good reviews on Amazon. So now that 2 years have passed, you know, God has kind of challenged me by the fact that, you know, I had you write this book and you haven't done a great job of stewarding it. You know, a mother doesn't give birth to a child and then just drop it somewhere and keep living. You raise the child, you teach the child. And so I took that from God as kind of a message of he's not done with this book. So I started talking about it a lot more and, you know, had the opportunity to meet you and, you know, just talk about it in some clubhouse rooms. So I'm excited. I'm excited about what God wants to do with it.
So, Justin, let's go back to that spot where you hit pause on writing the book. Did you go from being an author to being the reader, in a sense, in the process, now that you're kind of talking to yourself in the process? Is that kind of what's going on there?
I think it's accurate. As a preacher, as a former pastor, every message that I preach, I really feel is primarily God speaking to me and dealing with me first before I can give that message to anybody else. And I really think that that point in the message where I paused, that was a fear reaction. That was a confidence reaction from the point of, you know, God has delivered me from it. So why would I be afraid to talk about it to other people? And so a lot of this book has been me writing to myself about experience. It's been very, very therapeutic. Um, and it's almost like me building an altar, and remembering everything that God has brought me through and casting a forward vision to see that there are so many people who would join me at this altar and give praise to God for what he's done and for what he's doing. If they were to read this book and receive the encouragement, I shiver to think of the freedom that so many people could walk in just because of something that I said yes to being obedient for God in.
Mm-hmm. So, like, the perception, I think, from people who do not have a faith journey or haven't been brought up in the church or had any kind of interaction with that, is they look at people who have faith or attend church or pastor or lead a group of people. They kind of look at people in those situations as they think they're perfect, or they have it all together, and they're judgmental and they're better than everyone, so I'll never be like them. And there's an us versus them kind of mentality for people looking from the outside of the church windows into the congregation, right, and into the group. So you're telling me then, in a role as a minister or as a leader, you don't have it all together? Is that what you're telling me?
I identify with Paul when Paul calls himself the chief of all sinners. I fully identify with that. And for people who are, who don't have, excuse me, a faith, or who don't believe in God, when I encounter people like that, I love it, because I do get to debunk that thought that it's us versus them. I'm glad to sit down with anybody and tell them all the times that I can remember that I've failed in life. Because there's power in sharing. I believe in celebrating stories and sharing stories. I think that's one of the things that ties all of humanity together. We may have nothing in common from a physical, cultural, racial, denominational, any of that. But I promise we can find common ground in the stories of the experiences that we've had in life. And I think that there's not enough of that story sharing going around. And so, even when I preach, I talk primarily about my life because I want people to see that I'm not just out here, giving you tips from the Bible about how to live a free life. I'm telling you how I've failed and how I've been built back up and how I've grown. So if it works for me, I know it can work for you.
And that can help to disarm some of the us versus them, right? As people can see that you're a real person who struggles in life just like everyone else can struggle in all different areas of life, right? But as you struggle, you are moving forward as much as you can daily and working towards what you vision through scripture as where we're heading as far as who we are as people, right? And you're on that journey. Right. When you start a faith journey, you don't start at the finish line. You start at the starting line, right? Just like everyone else, right? And you're in a process. So I spoke to an author recently, and he had a book about grace. And he brought up an interesting point. He said that grace is not determined by our list of who can have grace and who can't, right? It's not up to us to decide who's allowed to have grace. I don't like this certain type of person, and this certain type of person doesn't like that type of person. And that's not how grace is defined. So in your view of your path, how important is grace to you?
It's been everything. It has been everything. There have been times where I've wanted to give up on myself, but in scripture, just reading the words of God saying that I'll never give up on you. That is grace that I don't deserve, because I live with my failure. Oftentimes my mind and my heart are filled with the many ways in which I've failed God, that I'm undeserving of his grace. Yet Jesus still died for me. And, that is an overwhelming feeling to know that there is someone who knows every bad thing that I've ever done, yet is still standing in the stands, cheering, saying, Justin, I love you. Justin, just keep going. Just take one more step. Just take one more step. I'm right here with you. You know what? Sometimes I see you're tired. I'm going to pick you up and I'm going to carry you. But don't give up on yourself, because I will never give up on you. And I am waiting to embrace you when it's all said and done and just say, well done. I'm so glad that you're here with me. And that is just, man, that is, I think it is that knowledge that keeps me moving forward every day. It's that knowledge that informs, I believe that my purpose, I believe that God created me to encourage, to inspire, and to motivate. Those are the three lenses that I view everything that I do through. Everything that I do on social media. If anybody invites me to speak, any blog posts that I write is through that lens of, is it leaving someone in a better condition after they read it or after they see it than they were before? Is it encouraging them? Is it inspiring them? Is it motivating them? So that's who I am, because of the grace that God has continually shown me.
Exactly. And that's the same grace that you're shown, and then we're asked to show that to others as well.
Yes, sir.
Right. Yeah. So it's a circle. It's a cycle. Right. And what I find interesting is when you do meet people who have faith, but they don't have grace for others, there's a disconnect. You've experienced grace from where you've come from, but you're not willing to give it to people. Right. So how can people demonstrate the change in their life to others?
I think, it always floors me, David, when you do meet people who have experienced grace, but they're unwilling to give grace. And to me, I think it stems from just a not complete understanding of just the ramifications of what Jesus truly did. Like, he could have come and he could have lived this perfect life and left us an example and refused to die. Like, I've shown you all the way to do it. Now you figure it out for yourselves and you try to make a way for yourselves to get back to God on your own. Now, if you do what I did, then you'll get there. But when you fully understand that Jesus was both fully God and fully human, so he dealt with the same things that we had, but he didn't sin. He faced the temptations and he faced the disappointments, but still he didn't sin. And he still chose to die for people who were, mocking him and jeering him from a crowd as he sat up on a cross. So for me, as I'm thinking about all of that, how can I not give grace? Because that person that I may be refusing to give grace to, that could be me. That could easily be me, who would be looking for someone to look upon me with grace, to look upon me with mercy, to look upon me with love. And I understand that it's but for the grace of God that I'm not in that situation. And it's because of the grace of God that I am able to stand in a situation to freely give that grace to someone else. When you really understand what grace is and how powerful the love of God is for us, then there's nothing inside of you that can properly withhold that grace and that love from somebody else.
So let's go back to the book then, Justin. So slaying the lion, now this can be adapted to the reader for whatever they're facing, right? You're not specifically talking about one specific thing. In general, you're talking about what is that thing that you're blocking you from your Starbucks, right? So, did you, when you wrote the book, were you writing it primarily based on your own life experience and more geared to yourself, or did you have an audience in mind, a person that you were writing the book towards?
Initially, I was writing it for myself. But a really cool thing happened over the course of the book, as God really began to expand my horizons. I've said before that writing this book, I would look in the mirror. The words are a direct mirror into my soul, into my heart. But as the book continues, the mirror expands, the reflection expands. And I begin to see so many people beginning to join me. I don't know their faces. I don't know what they look like. I don't know where they are. But there's a common thread in our life experiences where we have allowed these lions, that metaphor, to rob us from the fullness of life that Jesus has for us. And there's something in us that's tired of it, but maybe we don't know the steps to take, the process to take to pick up the lion. So like there's a part in the book where I ask a question: what's in your hand and what's in your heart? The what's in your hand thing, so many times we don't think that we are capable of defeating the issues that we come up, in our lives. In David's hand, David had a slingshot. Now we read that and we think that he just had a little piddly slingshot, couldn't do anything. David was a marksman with that slingshot. So the very thing that you may think is ordinary in your hand, if you're using it properly, becomes something that is deadly. And then what's in your heart? If you have a heart that's filled with the peace of God, then that will direct you to courage in any situation. And if you have a heart that's filled with the love of God, then you understand that it's so important that I overcome this obstacle, because the love of God is going to then push me toward those who are in that obstacle. And my heart has to love them enough for me to overcome mine, because God's going to send me to them to help them be cleared of theirs.
When I look around the world right now, Justin, I just see a lot of division. I see a lot of hurt going through COVID, through everything. There's just a lot of noise in it on social media and on the news, in your communities, even within our own families. I think there's a lot of people just struggling with finding some peace in life. And there's I guess if we want to refer back to the book again, there's a lot of lions all around us. So like if somebody's listening to this and they think they're identifying with this and they're going to get the book, obviously, but they just don't know where to start. Do you have any thoughts on a person who is facing some pretty big things in life and they just don't know where to start?
Well, I always point people first to the Bible. Reading the life of Jesus in the Gospels, you see how he approached adversity, the grace that he had with people that have hurt him, the forgiveness that he's shown with people, even those who doubted him, just the impact that he was able to have on their lives because of his character, because of his love. So I point them to the Bible first. And then if there's someone who's considering getting my book, here's what I would say. I think the Bible says, and I may get this wrong, if one can put 1,000 to flight, two can put 10,000 to flight. It is important, especially now, when we've come through a pandemic where our communities have been busted and destroyed. We have gotten more comfortable living life by ourselves and in community with others. In my book, I say, find your hunting party. Those men, those women who are going to come alongside you and guard your back as you are fighting. On one front, they are protecting you on the backs and on the sides. And I am a firm believer. That it is essentially important. It is such an important component of life right now that we are not doing life by ourselves, and we're not trying to do life by ourselves. As a matter of fact, I am currently writing a study guide to go along with the book for small groups of people to come together and to share the steps that they're taking to overcome and to defeat those lions. Because I believe that we are stronger and we are better together. And if we can come together and first consult God's word, that's the first thing. But number two, if you get this book, read it with somebody else so that you can bounce ideas off of one another, and that you can experience together the power of God working in your lives together through these words. I go back and I read parts of this book, David, and I'm like, how in the world did I write that? That is so much better than I am smart and better than I am gifted and talented. We have to find ways to come back together. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm working on this study guide as a means of bringing people back together to rebuild communities that have been broken.
So on your Clubhouse bio, you have a saying, a statement, and it starts with why. Why is the word why? It's a weird question. Why is the word why important to you? Can you explain why that is on your bio on Clubhouse?
So I used to have a podcast called The Why Cast because I've always been the why person. Even before I discovered the work of Simon Sinek, I love his work, but even before I became aware of his work, I was always asking why. Why am I doing this? Or why did you make that decision? Or why did you not make that decision? I think the why is important. It is the starting point for any change that's going to stick in our lives. It is the starting point for it's the starting point for everything. If I can understand my why, then I can find the motivation to continue. Like, we have a Peloton that's right beside me that is collecting dust right now.
Oh, no.
When we first got it, why did we get it? We wanted to be healthier. I am a type 2 diabetic. I want to be around for my kids as they grow up, for my grandkids as they grow. I had that strong sense of why, and we were good on it for a long time. And then life got busy and we started missing, and I lost track of that why. And if I can relate this to the book, why did I write this book? Because I love people, and I really believe that, God would not have given me these words if his heart were not for the people who were hurting in these situations, who don't see a way out, who feel alone, and who open the door every day and they see that same thing looking at them. They hear that same voice every day saying that you will never amount to anything. You will always be afraid. You will never have confidence. The promises of God are for everybody but you. Because I was that person. I could stand in the pulpit and I could preach a word about the promises of God and taking them in faith, while at the same time hearing in my head, yeah, that is appropriate for everybody but you, Justin. And so my why is that people will know that the word of God does not show favorites. It is equally as powerful for me as it is for you, David, as it is for anybody else who's listening. we just have to come to a consensus that we believe it and understand why we believe it and use that why to spur us onwards into, because God has greatness in store for all of us. There are things that we have to work through to get there. You know, the Israelites had to fight to get into the promised land. The promises of God are just beyond that next obstacle. We just have to find that courage to be willing to fight through it. And so that's why is such an important, that's why it's such an important thing for me, because it is a powerful motivator, and it is powerful in helping us build those consistent systems that help us to accomplish the goals that we want to accomplish.
So tell me the why behind Faithing While 40, your podcast. What's the why behind that?
So quite simply, the why behind that is I'm in my 40s and faith looks different to me than it did in my 20s and my 30s. You know, there are promises that I've been holding on to God for now 20 years that have not come to pass. And I'm comfortable asking God now, God, what is going on? Like, is this really what you want for me? Is this not what you want for me? And so I needed a space where I could be honest about where I am in my faith, but also provide a platform that might help others who may be having the same questions that I am. As a creative, you know, as someone who is almost fatally obsessive and obsessed with time being passed, I look at my 40s, and so many people, they reach their 40s and they feel freer. Like my wife feels freer in her 40s now than she ever has in her life. For me, the apprehension with my 40s has always been, God, it feels like my time has passed, but I'm still waiting on so much from you. And so this podcast came out of that idea, where I can talk, like there's an episode where I talk about how I need therapy and how there may be others out there who need therapy. The most recent one that I released yesterday is talking about establishing value. And that comes from Clubhouse, actually, because Clubhouse rooms are so focused on what is your value. Make your pitch, provide your value. And as an author, not an entrepreneur, when I get in those rooms, I almost never go up on stage because I get, you know, the fear hits me. Like, dude, you've only written a book. Where's the value? What is the value in that? But understanding that you have value because God says you have value should strengthen you, should encourage you. So I'm talking to the people who don't think that they belong to be in the rooms that they find themselves in. You have value. You're on the pathway that God has placed you because he put you there. So there's value in that. So this podcast is me talking to myself, but it's me talking to other people who may be in their 40s or their 30s or their 50s or their 60s, who are ready to have honest conversations with God, and who don't mind becoming a part of a community with other people who feel the same way, who have the same struggles. So that's what Faithing While 40 is about.
So looking back at traditional ministry, pastoring, leading a church and a congregation, you have your Bible studies, you have your Sundays, and that's about the only public-facing opportunities you have to share a message. How is that different now with social media, Clubhouse, podcasting? What does that mean to you, having a message for people? Is it a powerful thing for you to have this access beyond a Sunday morning service, for example?
So being in a position right now where I am not active in pastoring or church ministry, being able to go on TikTok where my students hang out and just put a video up where I'm breaking down a Bible verse or I'm talking about a prayer. It's not powerful. It's humbling. It's exciting. When a student comes up to me and says, Mr. B, I saw your TikTok. I don't believe in God, but that message that you gave in that TikTok, it helped me today. Like, that's crazy. And when I have students who come up to me in class like, Mr. Bell, you're TikTok famous. You have over 30,000 followers. I'm like, I'm not TikTok famous. I'm just a guy who gets on TikTok and prays for people, and who prays with people that I may never meet in life. I may never know the person who sees that video. And I think that's the beauty about the online space. I can put a podcast out. I can put a 60-minute video up on Instagram or on TikTok. I don't have to worry whether or not somebody's going to see that video. I can have the faith to believe that just the right person who needs to see it is going to see it, and it's going to plant a seed. I'm a farmer. I'm a farmer for God. He's given me all the seed I need, and I make content where I scatter seed. And that, to me, that is a beautiful life to be able to live.
So some of the students that you're dealing with, and my dog is just starting to bark. Some of the students you're dealing with, what are some of their lions right now?
Their lions are some of the same lions that kids dealt with when I was in school. A lack of identity, being defined by the wrong things. But I think the intensity of them are ramped up because of social media. You know, they're exposed to what their gender roles should be. They're exposed to, you know, you be whoever you want to be. It doesn't care. It doesn't matter what anybody else says. You do whatever you want to do. It doesn't matter what anybody else says. So they're getting all of these messages that are consistently bombarding them. And so the impact of their mistakes are so much bigger because there's always a video camera right there catching it. You know, a messed up word here or there is amplified and becomes an entire anti-message because it's done in front of a camera. Like, there is an online world that is consuming everything that they're doing because they're choosing to live their lives online. And then when they get offline, the full ramifications of the things that they're saying or doing, that becomes a weight that hits them once they put the phone down and they're having to live in the reality of space. And even as a teacher, I'm you know, I cannot talk to my kids about Jesus. I cannot, you know, pray for them or offer them, you know, words from a biblical perspective, because that would probably, you know, I'd probably lose my job if that ever got back to administration. But I can offer up as many lessons from the Bible without mentioning Jesus as I can fit into a 45-minute class. I can live my life in such a way before them that they can look at me and see that there's something different about you. And from there, I can say, but there has not always been. Let me tell you about when I was an idiot when I was your age, or when I was an idiot in my 20s. So it's cool when they tell me you show up on my For You page, because in some instances, it opens up an opportunity for me to be a real human being for them, not a teacher, not a parent, not an adult, but brother, sister, I have messed up. And I think you can relate to how I've messed up because I've seen you going through some of the same thing. Life goes on. Don't give up on yourself. Life goes on. One day you will look back at this and you'll be able to talk to someone just like I'm talking to you. Just keep making one foot in front of the other and you will be just fine.
Justin, what is the status of your lion right now?
We are actively involved in several rounds of battle. And one of the things that I write in the welcome to the book is that I don't write this as an expert. I don't write this as someone who's looking back. I write this as someone who is actively every day engaged in conflict. It keeps me humble. It really does. It keeps me humble. Clubhouse has been good because it's nerve-wracking for me. I look at people who have so much
Hmm.
confidence in their message. Um, as someone who's looking for a way to be able to live a freer life, um, and not necessarily be beholden to a schedule necessarily. Um, when I listen to people who have all of this confidence in their message, so much confidence in their vision, and they're able to get onto a clubhouse space and just speak and speak, and it's so motivating, and it makes me want to, shell out money. Like, wow, oh my goodness. Um, I fight fear every time I turn on Clubhouse. I fight fear, thinking about opening up a Clubhouse room of my own. I fight fear. I fight it. I fight it every day. And that may be the thorn that's in my flesh that God uses to keep me completely and every day by his side. And if that's the case, I will gladly continue fighting this lion, because I can look at so many different ones that God has helped me to defeat. If this is the one that I have to keep fighting fear and then keep encouraging people in for the rest of my life, sign me up. I am completely 100% in. If people need to see me fighting to believe that they can fight and that they can win, then make me the poster child. I am totally fine with it.
I think the one thing people just might not realize is where the lions really are. And if you don't know who your enemy is, you can trip through life and make a lot of mistakes and get hurt often when you don't know who's out to get you, right? And that's why I love the title of the book, because it's identifying and locating these lions in our life that are out hunting for us. Like, they're not just sitting there waiting for us to trip into their path. They're seeking us out, right? And we need to seek them out at the same time. It's a two-way street here.
Right. And so the scripture where this comes from is in First Chronicles, where a man by the name of Benaiah, he sees a lion as he's out doing whatever he's doing. And the lion doesn't hunt him.
Okay. Yeah.
He hunts down the lion and down into a pit, kills the lion. That's crazy. That lion didn't try to kill him. He had the intention in his head, I'm going to kill this lion before it can get to anybody else. And we have to have that mindset. Like, I don't want my kids dealing with the same lions that I deal with. So it's important for me to kill these lions now before they even notice my kids are like, a tasty snack. I don't want that. I don't want that. So I want my kids to see me actively fighting so that they know what it looks like, but they also know Dad is trying to get this right so that I don't have to deal with this. And I think when we look at it through a lens of what are our kids seeing in us? What are they seeing? Where are they seeing us overcome obstacles? It really becomes a powerful teaching moment without even having to say a word in their lives.
There's a lot of people, I think, Justin, out there that are hiding their lions. They're trying to put up a facade and everything's cool and everything's great, but right behind me, there's something growling and his tail's moving. And as long as I look like I got it all together, I'm not going to draw any attention to me. And then there's people like you, Justin, who are brutally honest, and you're sharing your journey to help people, and you're taking down that facade and saying, this is who I am. This is what I'm struggling through and what I've overcome and what I'm working on that I haven't overcome yet. And when you mentioned that you're a little bit cautious about Clubhouse Room, for example, you're demonstrating this just to me today, that fear or that thing can be definitely addressed and overcome, because you're challenging me right now and you're challenging the people that are going to be listening to this. So I'm a big fan of the journey that you're on. And I just want to encourage you with that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So Justin, the book is available on Amazon. People can go find it. Slaying the Lion, Hunt What Is Hunting You. They can go find it on Amazon. Easy to find, right? Go purchase that book. Get a copy. Share it with somebody. Don't just read it by yourself. And this is a great way to open some conversation. Husband and wife, parent and child, friends, whatever it is, right? So that the book's gonna be great. The podcast as well. Faithing While 40, another example of a way to get a little bit more Justin in our life and to kind of follow along on that path, right? And you get a little bit more. And then on top of that, I'm looking forward to as well having the guides that go along with the book. That's a great idea to kind of extend the shelf life of the book and maybe give people a little bit deeper knowledge in the book as they can kind of study it as a group study. That's a great idea, Justin.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, God said he wasn't done with it. And, 2 years ago when I published the book, people told me, you need to make a study guide. It's like, nah, I don't want to. But now I think timing is everything. It's been nice to write. It's been nice to write. It's going to end up being about 9 sessions. And yeah, it's just, I've written it in a way that I think it would be really something that's really nice to share in a community with other people. So
good. It is coming from a good place, Justin. I can, just talking to you today, I can tell your passion for people, your passion for your story. It comes out in everything that you say. So really appreciate you spending time, Justin. So the best way for people to find you on Instagram is probably the best way.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I believe it's @_JB Speaks.
Okay. Appreciate your time, Justin. Thank you so much. And I'm going to see you more on Clubhouse. I can't wait to come in one of your rooms. I'm going to be right there on stage with you. All right. You let me know and I'll be there. All right.
Appreciate
your time today.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
All right.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Hi guys, this is Dave from Living the Next Chapter, a podcast designed to connect authors and audiences. We're always on the lookout for our next interview. If you're an author, a publisher, and you have a book, whether you're just starting, whether you're halfway through writing, or it's all done and you want to tell the world, that's why we're here at Living the Next Chapter. Get in touch with us through livingthenextchapter.com, contact us, and let's set up some time together to discuss your book, to discuss your project, and how we can get you on the show. My name is Dave, and I would love to speak to you. So go to livingthenextchapter.com, and let's get over there together and discuss all the great things that you're up to as an author, as a publisher, and let's grow your audience together. Join us on livingthenextchapter.com for great authors and an audience that's eager to hear about what you're up to as an author and a publisher. Contact us today and let's get your book out in front of others. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.